You probably heard about the recent controversy surrounding Boba tea. Simu Liu, who was a guest judge on the Canadian TV show Dragon's Den, and he called out to Canadian entrepreneurs for allegedly appropriating boba tea and not mentioning that it comes from Taiwan. Do you think that this is really an instance of cultural appropriation?
Yeah, so from an anthropological perspective, culture is not bounded. It's very flexible. It's always been borrowing, appropriating different elements. I think for this instance, I think it's the way they present their product. They have a sort of a condescending tone that they're making it better, or hinting that the boba tea before was unhealthy. I think that's the key. I think if they use another way to present their product, it might not gain such a controversy.
What's the role of ethnicity in cultural appropriation and deciding whether something is or is not culturally appropriate?
Yeah, that's why I think this is the key issue here. Cultural appropriation, I think, became an issue once, for example, colonialism started. So most of the cultural appropriation complaints you will heard is about the dominant culture appropriating powerless people, especially in circumstances that they were being colonized. So particularly indigenous people, their clothing, their cultural elements, even their ritual, their songs, ritual practices, for example. So ethnicity over here has to be viewed in the colonial context. And there's also the issue of neoliberalism when the meaning of a product can be stripped of its cultural meaning and became a commodity, a product.
So if a product is not being commercialized or a cultural phenomenon is not being monetized, does that mean that it cannot be culturally appropriated?
For me, there are a lot of examples of cultural appropriation based on understanding and mutual respect and a deep learning of how should we utilize or appropriate this cultural element. Or even in another instance, cultural appropriation can be a way of resisting a dominant culture. For example, Caribbean carnival, it has a lot of different elements, borrowing, particularly from, for example, Western clothing, dresses. But it is used in the carnival context as a satire for against the slave owners or the colonizers. So it's a form of protest or resistance. Cultural appropriation can have this connotation.
Well, speaking of cultural resistance, hip hop, which is probably copied everywhere in the world or imitated to some extent, maybe appreciated all over the world. Where do you think is the boundary between appreciation and appropriation when it comes to hip hop, which is a type of, or a culture really that emerged in a very, very specific socio-economic contest?
Right. Hip hop, I think, is the perfect example. It is formed in New York City around the 1970s, 1973 to be exact. And it is often viewed as an African-American art form. And obviously sort of part of the Black culture movement. But if you look at the history of hip-hop culture, you will see that the pioneers are actually of Caribbean descent. Those DJs use Jamaican sound system and some of their technical elements for their DJ performances. You see breakdancing using elements from Hong Kong Kung Fu movies. You see those equipments being from Japan, technology, innovation. So hip hop under this light is actually multicultural, has a multicultural origin. And it's always been very flexible and remixing different elements. So as you know, when hip hop being globalized, spread to different worlds, being appropriated by the different youth cultures, I don't see there's a problem with that. And in different places, when they're practicing hip hop culture, whether it's rap music, DJ, breakdancing, graffiti, they're putting their, it is a craft. They're putting their time and effort into learning it, honing their craft. There's a key concept called sample in hip hop. So you're always paying homage to the origin. The connection is always there. The meaning is never stripped.
Do you think that hip hop translates well to Taiwanese cultures? Is it appreciated here? Do you feel in a localized way?
Hip hop roughly has 4 elements: DJ, breakdancing, rap music, graffiti. It's sort of a discourse of the hip hop culture origin. And when it's travel around the world, it's often travel as a package. But interestingly, in Taiwan, it's never viewed as such. Hip hop as a 4-element package. Different elements: rap music, DJ, even breakdancing, travel to Taiwan through different roads. For example, people making rap music, they don't perceive themselves as being part of a hip hop culture. People learning breakdancing won't perceive themselves as doing hip hop culture. So it's being reorganized or in Taiwan in a different way. But in Taiwan, we appreciate those different elements and practices based on our own cultural understanding. For example, rap music, when being introduced to Taiwan, was imagined as being has a very close affinity to traditional Taiwanese oral practice called song reading, 两瓜. So that's a way of seeing this borrowed cultural element having its own root in this island.
What happens when brands get on the bandwagon? Mm-hmm. So when I see a brand making sportswear and shoes, mm-hmm. putting hip hop music, mm-hmm. DJing, breakdancing front and center mm-hmm. in their ads, mm-hmm. is that appropriation?
I don't see. First of all, it has to be good music. Of course, it has to make you nod your head. And second, so you have to follow this. I think it's the hip hop aesthetics. It has to make you vibe. I think that's the most important thing. Secondly, like I said, the musicality of hip hop always has this connection, sampling old music or in the lyrics. Paying respect to different rappers, MCs, often as the pioneers of this culture. So this connection will never be stripped. And if the brand using hip hop music is smart enough to notice this, I think, and keeping this connection intact, keeping the culture, the meaning in hip hop very well expressed. I don't see a problem of cultural appropriation here.
What if they lose that meaning? What if it's only aesthetic and nothing mm-hmm. else?
Then I don't think it's good music, and I don't think it can be criticized as cultural appropriation, because we can also say that they are appropriating Hong Kong kung fu moves and styles, but we don't say that because we know that hip hop is very diverse in its origin.
Well, going back to Boba tea, most people in Taiwan mm-hmm. didn't seem to mind that much the entire Canadian TV show controversy. What do you think of that? Should we listen to the culture that is being appropriated from, even mm-hmm. if someone else calls mm-hmm. out appropriation?
No, this is actually often the case. For example, wearing kimono, Japanese dresses, and being accused of cultural appropriation, but Japanese people don't mind it at all. I think in this particular case, people in a diaspora setting, like overseas setting, will be more sensitive to this kind of issue. And in Taiwan, back home in Taiwan, we are, in that sense, we are more culturally secured, and we don't find it offensive. But I can absolutely understand that in an overseas setting, for example, for a North American viewership, people of Taiwanese background or a Pan-Asian background will see it as an issue. So there's this difference.
What are some of the biggest, most egregious examples of cultural appropriation that come to your mind?
Well, obviously in the indigenous setting, traditional indigenous dances being borrowed in the name of promoting a national identity that happens very, very often in Taiwan. And those dances, songs have very deep cultural meaning. And particularly thinking about the indigenous people here are still under a colonial context. So those are the things I think cultural appropriation being understood as a something that happens against the powerless people. I think that would be an issue. Although I wouldn't solely frame it as a cultural appropriation, but colonialism, I think, is probably a more appropriate frame to understand this kind of issue.
What would be a better way for Taiwan to sort of promote these elements of indigenous cultures without veering into appropriation?
Right. So first of all, there is the issue of cultural property right, that has recently become legalized, and secondly, is informed consent. If you want to borrow or learn a cultural practice from the indigenous community, you have to seek consent, and there's a protocol and proper way to learn it. And if it is agreed to be taught and be shared with you, you have to do it in a very respectful and meaningful way. And I think those can be achieved.
Thank you very much. This was a very interesting and enlightening conversation.
Thank you.